What is up, guys? We're gonna do a series for the best red leader for the set 20 meta. I'll try to get right into it, but just want to say I'm only gonna do 5 leaders at once. There is gonna be a roster of 20 different leaders. Actually, this is actually 19. Ignore the 20, but there's gonna be 19 different red leaders that I'll be assessing whether which one is the best out of the red leaders, and I'll be using my objective measurement that I presented in the last video. The same rubric will apply. And for those of you guys don't know, here it is. These are the ways that I will apply the points to the criteria that I'll use to determine which is the best red leader. So this will be kind of like a series, but for the red part, for all the colors, I'm gonna have to break it down into multiple videos. So this will be part 1 of the video, and yeah, so let's get right into it. The ones today for this roster will be Bulma, Cooler Mill, U7 Son Goku, Gogeta Br Exodia. A lot of people know that as that because it FTKs, and Android 13, which is the one that recently came out where it awakens but it doesn't attack. So let's start off. First things first, we're going to start with the raw Bulma. So Bulma, if you guys don't know, has the ability to give blocker, the keyword blocker to all of your battle cards that are Saiyans and Earthlings, and also red and yellow. So if they share either of those colors or have both, they gain the blocker ability. She has an activate main. Instead of attacking and drawing, she just draws a card, and then she is unable to self-awaken herself unless you use cards that allow you to awaken. But then you get down to 4 life or less, you may untap 2 of your energy and flip on the backside. Her backside does exactly the same thing. The only difference is you draw 2 instead of 1, and she's also a 10k as opposed to a 5k. So pretty good stats. I mean, pretty poor stats, but she is an Earthling, so she's not supposed to be a very powerful leader. She's supposed to be a very strategic leader. So the first criteria I use is whether she can awaken, self-awakens fast and on her own. And unfortunately, none of the cards in her archetype allows her to awaken herself. You would have to play things such as awakening aids to help her awaken, and that's okay, because sometimes with the caveat that I'm using, even though she doesn't self-awaken herself, her battle cards that she could play could help her self-awaken, and so you would have to play battle cards that basically has an activate main and take a life, as opposed to attacking with that battle card, because if you attack with that battle card, it's now in rest mode and it can't have the blocker ability. So I will not award a point for Bulma being able to self-awaken fast or on its own, but it is worth noting after all. The second criteria I use is whether she can draw random cards for BO1 pre-side or just BO3 side decking, and I can't give her any points for that one, because although she does draw random cards, she doesn't generate enough to make a significant impact on the meta. So since she can't self-awaken to her backside to draw 2 cards a turn, this limits her ability to be able to impact the meta and draw significant side decks against your opponent. So I will not be awarding points for Bulma. The second strategy, or the second criteria that I use, is whether she can search out these cards out of her deck. And since she doesn't have that ability to consistently see these cards, you'll have to hard draw into them by chance. I think these are the 3 cards that are key to her strategy. The Bulma, the bunny girl, allows her to basically, if ever your opponent decides to play a board wipe that destroys all your weenies, I would say, your 1-drop weenies, Bulma the bunny girl can basically come in for free after the AOE effect, and then basically re-establish the board with 2 more blockers. The next important card in Bulma's arsenal is Videl. Videl has the ability to be able to recycle a super combo at her best, and she also is able to recycle herself as well. So this basically makes it so that Bulma can play the long game better, able to draw super combos and recycle super combos better, and I think she's a key part of your strategy, and only the Bulma leader can do this, and it's unique to her specifically. Yeah, so that's pretty much all there is. And then there's Baby, the Unison. I think this Unison is one of the best 3-drop Unisons there is in the game currently, because it has the ability to basically remove a battle card off your opponent's side of the board, draw a card, and then gain 10k. It also has the ability to protect itself, in the event of your opponent attacking it with double strike or single strike, you can just remove that many damage underneath the card as opposed to removing markers. So that in tandem with the leader's ability to give blocker to everybody makes it really deadly because essentially the blockers protect the unison from big attacks. So yeah, enough about that. Unfortunately, she is unable to search these cards consistently or play it out. So I will not be awarding points for Bulma on this criteria. So the other criteria that I use is whether she can preserve hand size in mainstream or unique ways. So I would consider Bulma a unique leader in being able to preserve hand size by making all of the weenie battle cards that are 1-drops on the board get blocker. You can essentially block all the big attacks that are coming in to the leader. Basically, when you do that, you preserve the hand size. Most of the blockers that you do play are able to generate advantage, also have barrier, such as the My 1-drop that lets you draw a card and has a barrier. So she replaces herself when you play her, and then she is able to have blocker. So the ability to give blocker to these barrier blockers that are only 1 cost is a pretty big thing about this leader. And because of that, you can pretty much defend your unisons, such as your juvenile unisons, and also preserve your hand size. So I think that's a +1 for sure, and I would definitely award points for Bulma being able to do that. The other one is whether she can generate massive advantages, and unfortunately she's only able to generate massive advantages when she's awakened, being able to draw 2 cards a turn rather than 1 card a turn on the front side. So because of that, she relies too much heavily on drawing heavily on your opponent's actions, which is to take her down to 4 life by swings, by attacking her, or relying on cards that help her awaken, such as anything that activates main and take a life. So I can't award her points, even though in theory she does draw a lot. The next one is whether she has unique battle cards. The cards in Bulma's decks are basically generic. However, because Bulma is able to give keywords to red and yellow Earthlings or Saiyans, she makes them unique, right? So she's able to access things about generic battle cards that other red leaders cannot, which is being able to give blocker to all the the red and yellow Saiyans. And so because of that, I'm going to award her points here because she does have a unique access to those battle cards, or the battle card skill, I should say. So I'll give her a point for that one. And the next one is early access. So yeah, I would say that even by turn 1, you're able to give access to your 1-drops because you only have to pay 1 energy to play a 1-drop blocker. And that 1-drop blocker is going to be pretty much controlling the game, the early game especially. I can imagine something like Fortune Teller Baba, which brings out I believe his name was a Kane, or I forget, Styx, maybe Styx? Yeah, one of her, the Mummy. Basically, Fortune Teller Baba brings out the Mummy from the deck, and for only 1 energy you have 2 blockers. So that's pretty early, and that's pretty good. So definitely good for that. Ease of access. So ease of access is whether or not the battle cards can be has a high probability of going to your hand, and I would say it does because you're going to be playing a whole deck with them in your deck. And then the other one is whether it's too conditional to pull off. It's not too conditional. All you have to do is pay 1 energy. That literally happens for any leader. By 1 energy and turn 1, you're able to have access to it. And the other one is whether or not it has deflect, barrier, or whether or not it's feasible. I would say it's pretty feasible. You're pretty much most opponents will not counterplay a 1-drop, wasting their cards to stop that. So definitely very feasible, very not too conditional, and also very high probable. So I'm going to give 1 point for that, for satisfying all those criterias. And this one's actually a hard criteria for a lot of decks, so I'll definitely award a point for Bulma on this one. The next one is whether or not I can cheat out cards for free or play for cheap. The only thing I can think of is Bulma the Bunny Girl. It is able to play for free, but even though it's conditional, or relies on your opponent's KOing the battle cards by skill, it is a way that you can cheat out Bulma. Is literally for free. Yeah, so it's because of this, I'll be able to award a point for Bulma. I'm sorry, I didn't put it down. So yeah, she should be getting a point for this one. And another one is whether or not Bulma has the ability to use an SCR better than any other leader of its color. So Bulma doesn't really give the ability to any blockers to most of the SCRs that are good. The best ones I can think of is Unbridled Power, but most of the time you want to attack with Unbridled Power. So I don't think that giving blocker to these SCRs are really an upscale to the generic red leaders that can utilize those same SCRs. So I do want to point out that Bulma, being a control leader, can definitely utilize the cooler SCR really well, because it'll be pretty frequently that Bulma will not kill you by turn 5, and if by turn 5 you're able to have basically the energy to play this guy, Bulma is definitely able to do so, and then by doing so, you're able to generate a lot of advantage because you're able to KO all your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and send them to the warp. And then your opponent will also lose 5 cards out of their hand. So I think Bulma can definitely use this particular SCR the best out of all of them because it's so generic. But unfortunately, I will not be giving points for this one. Does Bulma have an inbuilt win condition? That's the next criteria that I will use. And unfortunately, she doesn't. Her ability to burn a life or mill a card or achieve victory strike is not inbuilt in the leader skill, so no points for that, unfortunately. The next one is whether or not she hits hard. Since the ban of Double Strike Champa and Supreme Kai of Time, or the Supreme Kai Double Striker being banned, she no longer has access to being able to hit with the Double Strike on the leader swing, and so I can't award her points for that one. The next one is whether she was positively affected. I would say she was negatively affected from the ban list, because Secret Identity is now at 3. So because of that, token blockers or blockers in general are easily susceptible to that board wipe, and so because of that, I can't award a point to Bulma on this category. So let's get a quick rundown or review session of what points that she was able to get. She's able to preserve her hand size using blockers. She has access to her own battle cards because she gives blockers to those battle cards that no other generic leader can do of her same color. She does have early access to those battle cards because they're all 1-drops. She's able to cheat it out for cheap or for free because they're either 1-drops or played for free with Bulma, the bunny girl. And has ease of access, which is the 3 criteria that I already mentioned. All the other ones she doesn't have, she pretty much does not have, so that will only grant her 5 points. So yeah, so that's the first red leader for 5 points. The next leader we'll be going over is the Cooler Mill leader, or a Cooler Revenge Transformed. I've never called it that. I always call it Cooler Mill. Many of you guys have watched my deck profile on set 20 Cooler Mill. But for those of you guys who have not, what this leader does is that when it attacks the leader, it has to attack a leader. It's an old school leader. It'll draw a card, and when the power of one of your opponent's battle cards are reduced by any amount, your opponent then places the top card of their deck into their drop area. So that's the milling aspect of this deck. And then once per turn, if it's your opponent's turn, when the power of one of my opponent's battle cards is reduced by one of my battle cards, draw a card. So this allows me to draw twice, basically in one turn cycle. And then when the leader goes down to 4 or less life, then you can untap one and draw one. The backside does exactly the same thing. The only difference is that when it can attack either a battle card or leader or a unison, and is able to draw, and it also draws on both turns, where when you're milling, when you're using a battle card to reduce the power of one of your opponent's battle cards. And additionally, it also mills cards once per turn on either player's turn. So really strong leader in my opinion. I think it's a really good red leader, and I can already tell that from reading this is going to be one of those high pointers for sure. The first criteria that I use is whether it awakens fast on its own, and unfortunately it does not have that ability. It doesn't have the ability to take life on its own, so you'll have to rely on things such as awakening aids to awaken, or rely on your opponents to take you down manually by swinging. But even though it does generate a lot of advantage, it's not enough for being able to swing hard, because it's not on the backside. So I can't award points for Cooler Mill on this one, and even though it's starting off pretty badly, it'll make up for it later. So the next criteria that I use is whether it can draw random cards, and random cards fast. And yes, it does do that because it's able to draw twice a turn basically on the front side. It doesn't need to be on the back side to draw a significant amount. Ideally, it does draw a lot on the back side, but on the front side, it's able to generate a +2 by attacking with the leader or in reducing the stat of one of the opponent's battle cards because with one of your battle cards, and then you're able to draw a card. So I will award a point for this one, and it is pretty good in my opinion because then you can draw random side deck cards easier. The next one, the next criteria I use is whether you can search out or play key cards out of your deck. And unfortunately, it does not have that ability to do so. It relies heavily on this particular battle card in your opening hand. That's why you do play 4 copies of it. It's able to help you mill a total of 3 cards. It is a battle card that arrivals on your opponent's turn, so that you can draw a card on your opponent's turn on the front side, and mill up to 3 cards out of your opponent's deck, 1 with its own ability and 2 off your opponent's your leader's ability on the back side or the front side. Anytime it's for each battle card that gets reduced, they'll mill 1. So since this targets 2 battle cards, it will mill 2 cards with its skill, and then 1 with its own skill. So yeah, unfortunately I can't award any points for this one, so let's move on to the next one. Now the question is whether or not this particular leader can preserve its hand size in mainstream or unique ways, and I would say that it does. And the way it does it is because by playing a battle card on your opponent's turn, using the arrival mechanic, and then minusing your opponent's battle cards, such time whenever your opponent decides to play a battle card with high stat and has dual attack, then or a triple attack or quad. I'm not sure if there's a quad attack yet, but in the event that it does have that ability, reducing the power of those battle cards to a lower stat so that you can preserve your hand size better is definitely how this particular leader does it uniquely. And because of that, I can award points for the cooler mill leader. Additionally, you're able to draw a card when you do decide to play a battle card on your opponent's turn, such as using a rival or Videl counterplay or Yamcha. When you do that, it replaces itself with the leader ability to draw a card. So definitely a way you can preserve hand size by playing free battle cards. The next criteria that it uses is whether it generates a massive advantage, and yes it does. As I mentioned before, it's able to draw twice on the front side and 3 times on the back side. Once on the back side, it does it ideally by using the Videl counterplay on your turn or your opponent's turn. So that's the way you can draw a card, or using the rush attack Vegeta to minus a card and draw a card, and then you can draw a card from the swing, and on your opponent's turn, when you rival a card or using the counterplays, you're able to draw another card. So that's 3 cards total, and that is a +3, which is why I think Cooler Mill does generate a lot of advantage. So I will award points for Cooler Mill being able to do that. The other one is whether or not it has access to its own unique battle cards. Cooler, Tyrannical Assault, and Videl and Yamcha are all cards that are generically accessed by all red leaders, assuming you play unisons in your decks that have a specified cost of 3 for Videl, a specified cost of 2 or more for Yamcha, and or if you're playing the multicolor engine, which is red and blue, all those red leaders have the access to do so. However, because the leader is able to generate advantage by basically replacing them whenever they're played from on your opponent's turn or your turn, this makes it unique to the cooler leader. The cooler leader just basically says limit 1, draw a card whenever you minus basically whenever you minus an opponent's battle card by 1. Limit 1 is probably not the correct term, it's just a placeholder term, because there's nothing that applies to it. It doesn't apply to all the battle cards of the same copy. It's a limit 1 more like it's a limit 1 in the sense that any battle card that has the minus ability can only draw once. So you can't play, for example, Majin Buu and Hercule Friends Forever, draw a card with that one, and then on the same turn play Tyrannical Assault and then draw a card. So it does have that weird limit 1, but it only places it on the cards that do the same ability. rather than the copies of that card. So yeah, I definitely award a point for this one, so I'll give 1 point to Cooler for this one. The next one is whether or not it has early access to those battle cards, and I would say yes. All you need is a way to combo a red and blue card. Most of the time this will be your super combo, but other times it could be something like Chilled Ruling Through Fear, which is a free combo card that is a multicolor red and blue. And by comboing that card, or even the Rival Seeker Goku, by comboing those cards, you have the ability to rival Cooler Tyrannical Assault or Majin Buu Friends Forever as early as turn 1, so that's pretty strong, I would say. So I will definitely award Cooler Mill at this point for doing so. The next one is whether or not it has ease of access, and I would say yes, it does have a high probability of going off. Like I said before, all you need is a multicolor to combo and those cards in your hand, and you're able to do it. Is it too conditional? I would say not really. All you have to do is combo those cards. And then the last criteria is whether it's feasible. Is it easily stoppable? Cooler being a Tyrannical Assault being a 5 cost. Most decks, I wouldn't say any decks, is able to counterplay that, basically counterplay that at turn 1. So it is definitely feasible to do this particular strategy. And so for that, I'll award Cooler Mill 1 point for this criteria. The next one is whether you could play it out for cheap or for free. And you can definitely play it out for free if you use Yamcha or Videl, and you can definitely play it out for cheap using Tyrannical Assault or Majin Buu Friends Forever. And so those are all 1 energy and free. So I'll definitely give points for this one, and it's definitely affordable as well if you're playing Rush Attack Vegeta in order to do so. Rush Attack Vegeta is only 2 energy, and then by playing it on your turn, you're able to minus the stat of an opponent's battle card, drawing a card with the leader ability on the front side or the back side. The next one is whether or not it's able to utilize an SCR better than any other red leader. And the Gohank's SS3 Unison is definitely made for the Cooler Mill leader because on play it has the ability to minus all of your opponent's battle cards by negative 25k, ignoring barrier. So that's pretty much a godsend for the Cooler Mill strategy. And additionally, on your opponent's turn, when they swing with the battle card, it has the minus ability to allow them to basically minus one of your opponent's battle card that it swings with, and then proc the leader ability to mill a card out of your opponent's deck. So because of that, it has a unique access, or it amplifies one of the SCRs better than other leaders. I'll definitely award points for Cooler Mill on this behalf. The last one is whether or not it has not the last one, but the other criteria is whether or not it has the ability to achieve an alternative win condition, and I would say yes, because it is a mill deck at heart, using cheap strategies to cheat out battle cards. So that is one of the ways that Cooler Mill can win, by milling your opponent out. So I'll definitely award a point for being able to mill your opponents out, because that is an alternative win condition. The next one is whether or not the leader is able to hit hard. Does the Cooler leader have double strike, triple attack, or triple strike? And the answer to that is no. It's just a single striker, so I can't award points for that one. And the last criteria that I use is whether or not Cooler Mill was positively affected by the ban list. And our recent one, where we had the Buu Unison go down to 1, it was able to be a positive influence for this deck. The Buu Unison was able to generate a lot of advantage for the opponent, and because of that, it was able to also block and remove battle cards that Cooler Mill relied on. And sometimes when the deck is centered around the Buu Unison and not, they basically incentivize them not to play any battle cards that the Cooler Mill strategy needed. So because of that, Unisons were very much the central focus of that deck, of blue decks, and so they couldn't effectively mill out blue well. So because of that, I will award points for being able to be positively affected by the ban list. And let's kind of tally here, by the looks of it, it's able to draw random cards. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 10. So about 10 criterias were awarded to the Cooler Mill deck. So on the leaderboard so far, we'll have Cooler Mill at 10 points and Bulma at 5 points. So yeah, that will be all for the Cooler Mill. Let's go on to the next red leader. The next leader I'll go over is the infamous and famous leader that used to be a top tier leader at one point in time, but it was overshadowed quickly later on to the later formats. But the question is whether or not it is currently the best red leader or not. And so we're going to find out whether or not this particular leader still got it. So does the ability is it able to self-awaken on its own and fast? And I would say yes. The ability to be able to use the activate main ability to mill 3 and draw a card and then discard a card puts 4 things into the drop area, potentially use 7 cards to allow it to awaken alternatively. And because of that, it increases the likelihood that it'll be able to awaken even by turn 2. So that's I would think that's pretty on par with most of the meta leaders currently, is being able to awaken by turn 2. So yeah, I'll definitely award points for this one. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is whether or not it can draw random cards for BO1 pre-side. I would say that while the leader does generate massive advantage in the beginning and they're able to hand fix, I would say, being able to attack and draw a card and then draw another card by milling 3, you're able to hand fix pretty well. So I will generate a point for this criteria because it's able to do that on the front side and has the ability to awaken. It is kind of weird though, is that because let's say you are siding and decking cards that want to be in the drop area, this leader can do that even more effectively because it is able to mill cards straight to the drop area. And so cards like Final Guardian that activates in the drop area, or Saiyan Instincts, those cards can definitely be accessed easier because this leader can mill them randomly. So I would say 1 point for this one for sure. The next criteria used is whether it can search out key strategies from your deck, and I would say yes because it has the Sparking 20 ability on the backside, being able to fetch either the SSB Vegeta Unbridled Power, which is your SER from your drop area because you have a high chance of milling it, or being able to fetch using the fetching the Ultra Mastery is a very key part of your strategy in being able to rush down your opponent, burn them, and attack them with double strike, dual attack. So definitely a +1 for that one for sure. Very consistent, I would say. The next one is whether or not it preserves hand size, and I think ultimately no, it's unable to do that. And the reason why is because though you're able to generate a lot of advantage on the front side by being able to attack with it and then drawing a card and then awakening and using the activate main to draw a card, and also untapping one, drawing one, you're able to generate a +4 if you're able to generate use the Sparking 20 on the same turn. But unfortunately it doesn't preserve its hand size in unique ways. When you combo a card, you're going to lose it forever, and so that's not something that's not a way you can preserve hand size in unique ways. It also doesn't have any floodgates. I forgot to mention that. It has no floodgates of any kind to stop your opponent from attacking you, much like Gamma does. So unfortunately, until they release a floodgate for this particular leader cannot do so. Hand preservation in unique ways. The next one is whether it produces net advantages, and as I mentioned before, in the long run it does not, but in the short run it does, and it only does it on the awakening turn, which is being able to generate a +4, and after that the leader is only able to generate a +1. So that's not really a key way to do well unless you're playing an aggro version. The other one I use is whether it accesses its own battle cards better than any other generic red leader, and I would say yes. These 3 cards in particular are cards that the U7 Goku can use better than any other red leader because it's able to be cheated out for free, or not cheated out for free, but cheated out for cheap. All you have to do is have Sparking 7 or Sparking 10 for certain of them, and you're able to play them for pretty much cheap. So the Frieza in particular I would say is the MVP of the deck because it has dual attack and is able to be played for only 1 energy if you have 5 Universe 7s or more in your drop area. I think that would be the MVP. It also minuses 15k to a battle card when it is played. No deflect, but it does need it because it's only one energy. The other one is the second MVP, I would say, is the Android 17, because it's able to, whenever it attacks, look at the top 3 cards for a U7 card, and then you're able to add it to your hand, and then bottom deck any of them. It also has a double strike ability, which is really useful against clearing unisons, even though the release of Black Smoke has overshadowed the ability to attack, or the need to attack unisons. Back in the day, this was a really good card to, and it still is a good card to remove markers off of unisons that came out early. So yeah, I'll definitely award points for that. Next criteria is whether it has early access, and as I mentioned before, you can play it as soon as turn 2 when you have 5 U7s in the graveyard, or in the drop area. The next one is whether it's ease of access. I would say it has a high probability of achieving its access, because you definitely need it. You have 3 different cards that can be played early as turn 2, and then you also have a it's not too conditional, because it's really easy to put 5 U7s in the drop area when you do decide to build them, and also it's feasible. It's not most of them have deflect to my knowledge. So let's go back here. The Frieza doesn't have deflect, and neither does the Android 17. But what does have deflect is the Vegeta in the middle here. That has deflect. So even if they do decide to counterplay these cards, it's not that much of a deal, because it's only 1 energy that you wasted for these guys. And so I'll award a point for this one, because it does satisfy all 3 conditions of the criteria. Is it able to be cheated out for free? And as I mentioned before, it is able to be cheated out for only 1 energy. Otherwise, you have to pay the 4 energies to play the Unbridled Power or the Ultra Mastery, which are really strong battle cards that come out as soon as turn 4. And if you hold your Awakening, you can untap 1 and keep 1 energy for defense. Does it have an SCR that's limited to this leader? And yes, the U7 Goku has the ability to access the dual attack off of this particular SCR, so I would say this is a really important part of the strategy. And then so this SCR in particular is definitely meant for the U7 leader, because of the dual attack. 40k triple strike is very much defining compared to other generic red leaders, because the generic red leader would only use the first 2 ability, but not the dual attack. And then the other one is whether or not it has an alternative win condition. I would say yes, it does, even though it doesn't have it printed on the leader ability, because you can get the Unbridled Power for using the Sparking 20 ability pretty consistently. The leader might as well have the ability to say pay 4 energy, play Unbridled Power from your deck, and then burn 1 life from your opponent. So I would say, because it has the burn strategy, it's able to satisfy an alternative win condition, so I will award a point for that one. The next criteria is whether it hits hard. I would say it does not hit hard, but the leader itself does not have the ability to double strike, and so because of that, I would not award points for that, because it doesn't have double strike or triple strike. And the next one is whether or not it was positively affected by the ban list, and I would say yes. Most of the battle cards from this leader was stifled by the Buu Unison, and since the Buu Unison has a lower probability of coming down because it's only at 1, the Ultra Mastery is able to do a lot of damage, and being unstifled by the Buu, and also being able to look at your opponent's hand and discarding a card, I would say is a really strong effect, and now it's unhindered when it plays the blue matchup. So let's tally up the points here, and it looks like this particular leader has 10 points from this one, so it will be on par with the cooler middle leader, and so the leaderboard will look like this: 10, 10, and 5 for the Bulma. And so that's all for the U7. Let's move on to the next leader. The next leader that I like to go over is the Exodia Gogeta Br. So this one came out of nowhere when it came out. It came out with the strategy to be able to bring out and cheat out the basically the triple combination Gogeta 8. And so we're gonna go over this one. For those of you guys who don't know what it does, it has an activate main ability. So if you just do go first, you're able to generate advantage. You're able to discard a red Goku BR or a Vegeta BR, and then you're able to draw 2 cards. And then from there, you're able to take a life from your hand and basically self-awaken itself. On the backside, you can warp a Goku or Vegeta from the drop area, and then this is an activate battle, and then you're able to give this +5 and double strike for the duration of the turn. And so that's gives your ability to basically hit hard. As a pretty much a spoiler. So, is it able to awaken on its own? Yes, I would say it's able to awaken fast and it's on its own, literally by turn 1 or turn 2, depending on which turn it is. So, it'll get you down to 4, +1 for this one for sure. Is it able to draw random cards for BO1 side deck or BO3 side deck? And that's yes, because it's able to hand fix itself by discarding a Goku or Vegeta, activate main, so this way you can do it on your first turn, and then you can hand fix as soon as turn 1, and then you can draw 2 cards right away. And taking 1 life. The other one is whether or not it can search out its key components. So the key component is the critical combination here on the left side. That's the key component. Because you're unable to add this to your hand consistently, I would say with the leader ability, I would say that this is an inconsistent strategy. It is a very Glass Kennedy strategy, so it relies on having that, and as well as the Broly SCR, which you sack away the critical combination, and then you can play the Broly SCR and land another double strike. The other ability of the Broly SCR pretty much allows it so that anytime they combo with a 5 cost, it has zero. It zeroes it out to 0 combo cost, so it makes it very difficult to combo over this guy's attack. Having barrier also makes it really deadly. So unfortunately, this leader is unable to access this using the leader ability, but even though it does have a high probability of seeing it, it's not consistent to the point of where you're definitely going to see it. Now the next question is whether it preserves hand size in interesting ways. I would say no, because this is a very aggro FTK deck or OTK deck, however you want to categorize it. Because it's so aggro, it wastes all of its hand size in order to secure the victory, and so I can't award points for this because it doesn't preserve the hand size as well as it should. The next one is whether or not it generates massive advantages, and I would say it doesn't, because the net advantage is actually just +1 on the front side and the back side, so you're not really generating any advantages. So no points for that one, unfortunately. So let's go on to the next criteria. The next one is whether it has access to its own battle cards. I would say in the Z deck it does. This particular one lets you look at the top 7 for a Gogeta Br card with an energy cost of 5 or 6 among them and add it to your hand. But that's not the real reason why this card is good. The real reason why is because it has Deflect in combination with the Activate main ability to be able to play the critical combination right on top of this, literally as early as turn 2, if you do to have it in your hand. So it also has the ability not to be able to be KO'd. So if you do counterplay something that can KO this, it can't be KO'd. So it's definitely going in, and it's definitely going to be a very unique battle card to the Gogeta Br deck. So 1 point for this one for sure. The next one is whether or not it has early access, and I would say it does have early access. The whole point is to be able to kill by turn 2 and as quickly as possible, and the whole deck is revolved around that. So it has early access to these battle cards, and it has early access to this particular Z battle card because it's in the Z deck, and you don't have to hard draw it to play it. You just need the Z energy to play them, and you only need 1. So 1 point for that for sure. The next one is whether or not it has ease of accessibility, and yes it does. It's in the Z deck, so it's very high probability. I would say it's 100% probability of doing it. All you need to have to do is pay the 2 red energy and as well as the 1 Z energy to play. It is not easily stopped as well because, like I said before, it has Deflect, and it can be KO'd. So those are 2 criteria in which it is very feasible for this strategy to go through. And then lastly is whether or not it has high probability of being achieved. I would say unfortunately it does not have a high probability because it requires your Broly SCR and it requires critical combination in order to enable the OTK. So because of that, it could basically be stopped, and so unfortunately it doesn't satisfy all the 3 criterias, and so I will have to award it no points for this one, which is sad. The next one is whether or not you can cheat it out for cheap. I can say since it is able to be played for free, the 8-drop and as well as a Broly SCR, it is able to be played for free, or for 2 red energy, I would say, because you do have to go into the Z deck in order to do it. So it's about 2 energies to play both the critical combination and the Broly SCR. I would say that's a pretty good bargain, so it is definitely coming out for cheap, so I'll award 1 point for this one. The next one is whether or not the leader can utilize a battle card or an SCR better than any of the generic red leaders, and I would say yes, because it is able to play out critical combination by as early as turn 2, and then being able to play this particular SCR. By turn 2, I would say that this leader is able to play this particular SCR better than any other generic red leader. So I'll definitely award a point for this one. And so it is, even though it's not leader locked, its ability to be played is definitely kind of leader locked. The question is whether or not it has an alternative win condition. And unfortunately, it doesn't burn or mill, but it does aggro out your opponent's life. So because of that, I don't consider that I consider this a form of beatdown rather than a form of alternative win condition. So no points will be awarded for this one, even though it is pretty aggro. The next one is whether it hits hard, and because the Gogeta backside ability is able to grant itself double strike, that ability itself is able to give you the extra leverage you need in order to finish off the game as quickly as possible. And that double strike is actually going to make it so that this leader definitely does hit hard, so I'll definitely award a point for this one. Next one is whether or not it was positively affected by the ban list, and I would say neutral, because the Boo Unison was something that came out on turn 4 for the most part, and since because this deck is trying to kill you by turn 2 into turn 3 range, that pretty much nullifies it ever being a problem back in the format where Boo was at 4. So if anything, it was a very neutral affection. Secret Identity didn't really do anything for this deck either, because it doesn't really spam out copies of little weenies that can be affected by the Black Saiyan, so neutral. And then the Double Strike Champa, since the leader itself has the inbuilt Double Strike in it, using the ability on the Activate Battle, the Champa was being lost did not affect it at all. So I will award no points for this because it is neutral. The final points add up, so this is about a 7-pointer. Looks like, yeah, so 7 points for this one. Although it did top several or 1 or 2 events, it didn't win the event, and this is why, because it's only a 7-pointer. So this is the leaderboard so far for the 4 leaders. We're going to go into the next leader, which is the last one. So the last leader I want to go over is the Android 13 leader. For those of you guys who know, this is the skilled leader. On the front side, it can't attack, but what it does do is when it rests itself, it is able to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and add up to 1 red Android card among them. So it does kind of increase the consistency of the deck, being able to add the androids that you need for your hand, and then also is able to awaken if you have 2 or more energy and one of both the Android 14 and the Android 15 card from either the battle area or the drop area. Then it's able to self-awaken itself, untap 1 and draw 1, and then take life until you have 6. On the back side, when it does attack, you get to play an Android from either an Android 14 or Android 15 that are both red with an energy cost of 1 from your hand for free, or you can draw a card. But most of the Android 14 and 15 cards are able to draw you a card, so you might as well just get the draw effect. But in the event that you don't have them in your opening hand or your hand at all, you can just simply draw a card on the attack. It also has the ability to place Android cards from your Z energy in the owner's drop, and then by doing so, you can, whenever you play a red Android card, you can add a red Android card from your drop to your Z energy. So you're basically just moving the cards around in a circle. So for enough about that, the first criteria is whether it's able to self-awaken on its own, and it's yes, that it's definitely a way you can do so, and is able to do it fast. Each of the Android 14 and 15 search out each other, so if you play the Android 14, you can actually hard search for the Android 15. If you play the Android 15, you can hard search for the Android 14. So you're able to play and awaken the leader as quickly as turn 2, because it does require 2 energy to play it. But you can also awaken on your opponent's turn. So if you search the other copy, you can just combo it away on the attack, place it in the drop area instead of Z charging it, and then awaken that turn if they press the damage. An old card that they do play is the Android Troop, which is the 14 and 15. It has both the names of 14 and 15, and what it does is if your leader is a Android 13, you can discard this card, and then you're able to draw a card. So this, just so that FYI, you're able to do this on the back side, so you won't be able to use that draw ability on the front side. So that is just something that you have to notice. So I will award a point for that one. Next criteria is whether or not it is able to draw random cards for BO1 or BO2. And although this leader does have the option to free play the Android cards, it needs to be Z Awaken. The Z leader is able to generate a +2, but on the the front side and the back side is unable to draw randomly in a significant amount to impact the meta. So unfortunately, I cannot award a point for this because it has to be awakened at 4 or less life, because the Z leader requires that life stipulation. So I can't award a point for that one, unfortunately. The next one is whether or not I can search out key strategies of this, and these are the 2 cards that are key strategies of the deck. The 1 drop is allows you to play the 7 drop from the deck by pretty much union absorbing the Android 14 and the Android 15 out of the drop area, placing them underneath the 1 drop, and then by doing so you can play the 7 drop from your deck on top of them. And the 7 drop has the ability, as if the Android 13 is underneath the card, it has the ability to have dual attack, and it makes it unaffected by red Saiyans. It is unaffected by red Saiyans with 20k power or less. So that's kind of cool. But the powerhouse of this particular card is that when it does attack, you get to combo cards from underneath it with the skills negated, and then you're able to choose one of your opponent's battle cards or unison and minus it by 25k. Because it has dual attack, you're able to use that ability twice. It's not a limit one, and it does have the ability to play itself out for 2 energy, but you have to wait until your opponent is at 3 or more energy. So if you're going first, that means you have to wait until turn 4 to play on this guy, and if you're going second, you can play it on turn 3, but you have to risk tapping out to do so. So yeah, unfortunately, since these cards are not searchable by any means, like you can't hard search any of these cards. You would have to get lucky off the front side ability. I cannot award points for this one because it's not doing it consistently enough. The second one is whether this leader can preserve its hand size, and in some ways it kind of does, but it doesn't have a floodgate. It also doesn't combo for free. Sometimes it can. So the backside ability, or the Z leader, is able to go up to 20k once per battle by placing a Android 14 and a 15 back into the drop area from the Z energy. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have it in front of me, but that's what it does. It's able to do so and preserve its hand size, but you have to be, like I said, Z awakened to do so, and that's kind of too conditional for that to happen. So I can't award points for this one, unfortunately, so I can't do it unless because it doesn't have a way to take itself down to 4. The next question is whether or not it can generate a massive net advantage, and like I said before, it has to be Z awakened, and since the leader doesn't have an inbuilt skill to go down from 6 to 4, I can't award any points for this either. The leader is kind of cool though, being able to self-awaken, but unfortunately because neither the front side or the back side is actually good in my opinion, I can't award any points for being able to get net advantage. The next one is whether this leader has access to its own unique battle cards that other generic red leaders can't, and it does, and it also has the ability to access the extra card. The extra card is a free negate by taking life. It's kind of like a token negate, except what it does, it plays out a 1 drop from your drop area as opposed to playing a token. So it has its own testing the opposition and built into it, but you don't have to be at 5 life. The only stipulation about this particular extra card is that you do have to be a Z leader to do so, to play it for free. Otherwise, you'd have to pay 1 energy if you're not a Z leader. So this deck is really, really centric about being a Z leader. It also has an Android 17 that lets you play it for free. And again, it has to be a Z leader, and you also have to be at 3 or less life. So a lot of stipulations, unfortunately, for that. But it at least is a 15k body that has critical. And then also it also has access to all the Android 13 that are 7 drops that you can play out of the deck. So that's kind of consistent in that regard. But other than that, I still reward this points just because it has unique battle access to the battle cards that are better than the generic support. Because I don't believe that there is a Android cards that this leader can access better than these ones. Unfortunately, this does not have early access because you do have to wait till your opponent has 3 or more energy, and that's sometimes a little bit too late. 3 is actually not considered to be early; it's actually considered to be mid-range. So because it's mid-range and not early, I can't award points for that one, and that's the reason why leaders are good, is because they're able to play out cards for as early as turn 1 or 2. Ease of access. These are the three criterias that have to be satisfied for to earn 1 point. The first criteria is whether or not it's too conditional, and unfortunately it is conditional because you have to wait until turn 3 in order to, or not turn 3, but until your opponent has 3 energy in order to play them. It does not have a high probability of popping off because again you rely too heavily on drawing the 1-drop Android 13, and it's not that feasible, even though the even though the 7-dropper here does have deflect. It doesn't have barrier, so falls victim to charismatic villain if you're playing against green, and that kind of makes it susceptible to removal, even though you work so hard to bring it out. So I don't consider that a feasible strategy to do, so I will not award points. It didn't satisfy a single one out of this one, and so we'll have to move on to the next one. Can you cheat it out for free? Yeah, I would say paying 2 energy is kind of a normal price to play out a boss monster, and if you pay any more for it, it's kind of costly. So being able to pay 2 energy to play a 25k dual attack double striker by turn 3 if you're going second, and turn 4 if you're going first, is kind of good, I would say. It's just that you have to wait until turn 3 and 4, but you can cheat it out for free, or cheap, sorry, for 2 energy. Does this leader have access to does it play secret rare better than anybody else? And I would say no. Pretty much this is a generic red leader that can access unbridled power and to burn extra damage, but that doesn't mean that it's better than any of the red leaders on the roster, so I can't award points for it either. Does this leader have an alternative win condition? No, it doesn't, unfortunately. It doesn't burn, doesn't mill, doesn't do victory strike. So we'll have to move on to the next one. And then whether we assess whether this deck can hit hard, and yes it can. If it's Z Awaken, it can hit hard. If it can't be Z Awaken, I pretty much can guarantee that this leader will be Z Awaken because the Z leader is way better than the front side and the back side of the Android 13 leader. So because of that, giving the access to the double strike is actually pretty good for that, so I'll actually award a point for this one. The last one is whether it was positively affected by the ban list, and I would say yes, because the Boo Unison is now limited to 1, and because your 7-drop is kind of the key aspect of your win condition, being to hit hard. I would say that because the Boo Unison is at 1, and it does come out on turn 4, for most of the part, I would say that the Boo Unison being limited to 1 makes it so it's harder to remove this guy, and then this guy being able to hit double strike dual attack for 25k is a pretty strong thing about the deck. So I would say I'll actually award a point for this one. The Z leader also has the inbuilt double strike, so even though Champa is gone, that means that no other generic leaders can access double strike Champa and Supreme Kai, Hidden Power, I think. And so because the generic leaders cannot access those cards, and this leader has an inbuilt double strike, I'll give this one 1 point. So it's positively affected by the ban list. So in totality, this is about a 6-pointer, and so that puts it 1 point above Bulma, and so this is the roster or the leaderboard. In first place and second place, we have Cooler Mill and Son Goku. In third place, we have Gogeta Br, and then we have Android 13 for 6 points, and then we have Bulma for 5 points. I will be doing another 5 on the next series for the red leaders, and I'll still include the leaderboard, the current leaderboard that we have, so we can finally assess what the best red leader is for the set 20 meta. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video or subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.